What's up, friends? My name is Casey and welcome to another miniature rescue. This week, we take a look at a sweet older Space Wolf model for Warhammer 40k. In the last few months, a few things have happened. I picked up a very nice set of older Space Wolf blood claws, painted them up, and even got some nice stamps on the shoulders. I then launched a hobby company called Goblin Hobbies with my friend Brent from Goobertown that now sells those stamps, which are currently back in stock, but I digress. Games Workshop also released a sweet new update for the Space Wolf army. I know I'm a few months late on that, but here we go. So there have been a ton of things happening in that space, and I'm definitely excited about it. Not only because I'm partial to those models, but because with the new plastic kits comes a bit of a turnover on the used market. When the new Space Wolves came out, it saturated the market with exciting new models, and in some cases, new versions of older ones. People are excited, they buy into a nice bit of plastic, and their old metal minis get traded in or sold off in order to make that switch. Inevitably, that means that there are higher than average numbers of certain models floating around in places like eBay. And you can usually find a better deal because people are competing on price in order to get the funds that they need to buy all the new sweet models. That also brings us to today's model that I recently purchased off of eBay. This is Njal Stormcaller, a really neat rune priest for the Space Wolf army, and a fantastic model that really holds up even by today's standards. Of course, the new model that came out is also really good, but there is still something about these weighty pieces of metal that just feels right. And this Njal definitely needs a good rescue. So here's the plan. I'm going to get this into a jar of acetone and start to melt that paint off. Hopefully that will eat the glue holding the arms and staff, and we can get the metal cleaned up and ready to get put back together. I also need to figure out a solution to a bit of a problem that we have here. This model is in fact missing something, and not one that we can really leave off. It's kind of integral to the model. Normally, this mini comes with a bird that goes on his shoulder. The newer model has the same kind of bird, more separated from that model, but the older version has it actually tied in with the sculpt, to the point that the legs of the bird are actually on the top of the shoulder. They're sculpted in, so they can't really be removed. The idea will be to print out a handful of birds on my 3D printer in a variety of scales and find one that fits properly. The original bird is some kind of raven with mechanical bits attached to it. Now, I don't know if I'm going to find exactly that, and there are things we can do to make that work if we absolutely need to, but I'm going to look. Luckily, it actually didn't take too long, and I found a handful of birds that look like they're probably going to work, including one in particular that was basically a mechanical bird, so that's pretty cool. I found birds from Victus Miniatures, Zabobka Workshop, and Print Minis. All very excellent companies that I have actually used quite a few times before, so these should be great models. I did some quick measurements of the base where the bird sits and where the legs connect, and brought a basic shape that matched that size into the slicer program. From there I was able to size some of the birds to make sure that they could potentially fit. I also added some sweet base toppers from Great Tide Studios to my print run. I've used these for my Space Wolves in the past and I think they're fantastic, so it makes sense to just print them out at the same time, and that way we kind of take care of everything at once. While those are getting done, we can start to get the rest of the model taken care of. So I'm going to get all these printed out, and I'm going to make sure that our mini is going to have a great base and a proper bird on his shoulder. But before that, let me tell you about today's excellent sponsor. Flexispot just sent over their C7 Max chair to replace the super old and busted chair that I've been using at my painting desk. Let's take a look and see how this chair can help you be in a better position to paint some minis. The chair has a ton of features, and a lot of them, while usually being pointed out for 9-to-5 job applications, clearly translate into the miniature painting experience. Here's some notable things that I've discovered. Now, my old chair was actually making it really hard to go for long stretches of painting, even short ones, really uncomfortable. Batch painting or even just trying to relax, my old chair just wasn't doing me any favors. The C7 on the other hand feels good right when I sit down. And it's weird because I realized that I stopped thinking about being in the chair as soon as I got to work, whereas my old busted one was constantly trying to adjust and get into a better position to feel comfortable while painting. Partially, that's due to the material that it's made of, but also the back support that automatically adjusts with my movements to keep me sitting properly and in an ergonomic position. I could feel it holding me in the right spot, and I've been able to just sit back and relax in it. Especially when painting for longer sessions, I don't have to take breaks nearly as often or stretch or walk around. The 3D armrests in particular are so good. They can move up and down, in and out, and swivel, so finding the proper height and placement for my elbows really helped me lock down on the models. I wasn't trying to fight my chair to get into the proper position to paint things like eyes. And that's something we often don't think about when we actually go to paint, how much that's affecting us. The chair is not the first thing we think of when upgrading our hobby spaces. Probably one of the last things we actually do think about. But being comfortable and able to steady yourself really helps when you're trying to get a lot done. Or just being more precise and not hurt. I mean, this thing even has a footrest. So if you're the kind of person who likes to sit back and paint, this chair is a fantastic option for that. This is definitely an upgrade from my old chair. And even better is Flexispot's 30-day return policy and risk-free trial that is paired with a 10-year warranty with direct replacement for damaged parts. So you can try it out for yourself and know that you will be covered in the short and long term. If you're looking for something to fit the budget a little better, then definitely check out their C5 chair. Good build quality with functions for adjustments as well. You can also check out the new C7 Morpher, which is similar but has an upgraded lumbar support and upper backrest. Upgrade your hobby space today with Flexispot. And don't miss out on the 9th Flexispot anniversary sale and use my code C730 to get $30 off of the C7 Max chairs using the link below. Thanks again Flexispot for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to that mini. Alright, everything is printed out and things are looking mostly okay. The bases look great, they usually always do, and I can get those down onto proper size bases for now. I don't actually know which one I want yet, and they're really quick to paint up, so I printed a few and I'm going to pick my favorite near the end. As for the birds, I got a good variety in sizes. I figured that some of the ones that I knew wouldn't work would be great for little additional details across the army. That sounded fun, and the bigger ones definitely fit on the shoulders because we pre-measured it, which is pretty awesome. For now, let's get the bases primed up and get this guy into a bath of acetone so that he can be cleaned up. So he's been soaking for quite a bit in acetone. Let me take him out real quick and we can see what's going on a little bit better. The acetone has done a pretty good job at removing the paint so far. It's bubbled up and lifted off of the surface in quite a few areas on the model. It also looks extra awesome like this. It's just fun to see a model look all gooey. From here, I can use a toothbrush to scrub away the majority of the paint, and what's left in the recesses can be picked out with a sharp X-Acto knife, or in some cases I can toss it back into the acetone to soak for just a little longer now that the topmost layer has been removed. It's going to get to that stuff that was deeper. Either way, it doesn't take too long to get the model down to bare metal. Once 99% of the paint has been removed, I can scrape any mold lines down and run a soft wire brush over the entire thing to clean up the surface and get the model ready for painting. Doesn't take too long with the Dremel, and the model is basically brand new. Probably the best he's looked in something like 20 years. Now that we have a shiny, clean model, it's time to get him onto a painting handle so that I can paint him separately from the actual bases. I drill a small paperclip size hole into his foot and glue him down to a wooden handle. I put all of the prime bases onto wooden handles as well, so that they'd be easy to paint. The process for the bases are actually pretty straightforward. They get a dark blue-gray dry brush followed by a couple of lighter dry brush layers to pick out the details. Gold for the designs in the stone followed by some verdigris for added color. I like to finish them up with some grass tufts and a little brownish red pigment powder, in some of the broken stonework. Little details that just make them feel more lived in, and we can get some nice contrasting colors for the armor. They're pretty easy and they look really good. Perfect for a full Space Wolf army that I know I will probably someday finish, hopefully. For my Space Wolves, I start with a nice dark blue-gray and then move up to a mid-tone blue-gray that will be most of the armor color. And finally, a few highlights on the uppermost facing areas with a very bright blue-gray. For the most part, the armor is that mid-tone gray, but there's a slight shadow and a slight highlight. It does look like a starker change on camera, but in person, under normal light, it's not a huge contrast, but it looks nice. The important thing is that it looks good and that it matches my existing models in this range. Okay, so that's it for airbrushing for now, which I did want to mention is something you can just do with a dry brush. Dark to light, pick up those edges, still looks great that way. I just like to use my airbrush whenever I get the chance, so here we are. I set up my wet palette and grab out some of the paints I know I'm going to need. The model has a variety of metallic details, mostly gold though, which is what I normally go for with Space Wolves. Some red, orange for the hair, a variety of skin tone paints, and some browns for the fur. At this stage, it's about blocking in colors and making a lot of choices. So I start by using my dark blue-gray and going over the sweet staff that our dude is holding. That cleans up some of the lines around the hands and gives a nice base for the staff itself. I can also use this color to take care of cables and undersuit if it's showing, which on this model at least is not showing very much, just a couple of pieces, but a darker base coat over those will make any kind of metallics look better and be perfectly fine base coating for anything that isn't actually metallic. For the fur, I start with a medium brown, something that we can go darker with in some places and lighter in others. There's quite a bit of fur on this model and it really takes up a majority of what you see, especially on the backside, which makes it pretty easy to get most of this model painted in not a lot of time, so that's kind of a bonus. The underside of the fur is a slightly thinned down version of that purple brown that I like to use. It's great for getting a dark skin tone on the fur and it stands out nicely from the fur itself. It's a perfect base coat to lay down some lighter marks on and make it look a little more like leather. It also happens to be a pretty good color for a bunch of other little details too, like leather straps that I base coat with a darker purple brown and some claws and pendants that I hit with the same thinned down version of that purple brown. Gold goes down onto all the little squad markings across the armor, as well as the right pauldron. This gold is Vallejo metal colored gold, and it's my go-to for Space Wolves. The tint it has, along with the almost perfect finish, makes it really great for these models. For the skin, I'm going to go for a pale pink flesh tone with some deep purple red shadows that match the fur a little bit. I coat the face with a dark pink first, and then lay some slightly darker and more purple color into the recesses and away from the middle of the face. Throughout the process, I'm going to dip back into this color and continue to darken the outer sides of the face as well as bring out those details, so anywhere that there would be shadow that we're not highlighting with lighter color. After I get that base done, I'll start to use a lighter version of that base coat and fill in areas like the nose, the forehead, and the upper cheeks. Then I can blend those in more with that glaze of that dark purple, and follow that up with more coats of lighter pink flesh. I keep doing this process until the face just starts to jump out a little bit more and it looks more blended. I also fill the hair in with a dark orange so we get a solid coverage. Then we can start to brighten up the hair from there. A little brighter orange on some of the larger volumes, picking out some individual strands of hair as much as possible. I also really like that same darker reddish purple skin glaze for the hair. It works really well for darkening those areas where kind of the lumps of hair meet in the crevices, or where strands start to curve in towards the body. Those same strands or clumps of hair get highlights on top and the shadows on the sides. This makes them look like they have a lot more volume, and it really accentuates the shape. The same goes for the face on the wolf pelt, a little lighter brown on top of the base coat in the same manner as the face of the actual model. And for the eyes, I went with a nice bright red with an orangey dot in the middle. Later on, I want to match the runes that are on the staff with that kind of reddish orange, so I think it's going to work really well. One of the larger objects on this model is the sweet leather holster for his pistol. I want this to stand apart, still leathery, but with a slightly different color to the rest of the leather details. Like, it's more special, or came from somewhere unique. So I start with a brown purple skin tone once again. It's going to be a great color for some interesting leather, darker but more purple than brown. Taking some orange brown, I'm going to put lines into the raised bits of metal. There are sculpted in details that do make this a little easier on this particular model. So I'm using the brighter color to bring those out. Then to change the color even more, I add a little bit of yellow ochre to that orange brown. It brightens up those lines and changes the color just enough to make the holster look more unique. At this point, there are only a handful of basic details to take care of. Some lighter brown on the fur, just picking out some of the larger strands, helps the fur stand out a bit better. And I can bring in some washes to basically finish this guy off for now. Using Tamiya black and brown panel liners, we can add a bit more color and separation into the model while maintaining a mostly clean look. And also leave some grime to keep it, more realistic, which is how I like my models. Obviously, it's a personal choice. You can absolutely skip this step if you don't like to do it, but here's how I go about that process. I liberally coat the armor in black enamel, and I throw some brown into the fur. This pushes back the color quite a bit. Coming in with some little sponges and some mineral spirits, I can lightly scrub the model and take away most of that wash. In some areas, I like to leave it a little spotty to give me a bit of weathering, but for the most part, this is used to panel line everything just like it was meant to. So all of the raised details remain the same and the recesses are much more defined, giving the model a more finished look. It's really great for getting models under the table really quickly too. Again, this is a totally personal preference. Everyone is a little different when it comes to weathering things down. This is where I'm at with my Space Wolves, and I enjoy that. Now I can finally remove him from the wooden handle and pick out a base for him. I did some dry fitting just to see how he's going to fit on a few of these, and I picked the one that I liked the most. After lining him up and seeing where the pin would go, I drilled a hole right through the resin and plastic and glued him down. The pin makes the metal mini super sturdy and much less likely to fall off. Realistically, he wouldn't survive a really bad fall, but being transported in a case, he should be just fine. The last thing is to add a bit of snow. I like to add a little bit of PVA to a couple places on top of the model like he's trudging through a blizzard, and then cover some of the areas on the base as well. Not too much, but enough to give the impression of snow. And with that, we have another model added to the lineup of my older Space Wolves, which I'm pretty excited about. That there are newer versions of this model and other Space Wolf models out or coming out definitely makes the older metal models feel more special or rare. While I do like the new kits, and I do have quite a few that need to be put together, there is just a fantastic quality about these older models. And I'm super glad that I was able to pick him up and give him the rescue treatment. Hopefully, I can continue to add to this collection and someday be able to play it fully on the table. Until then, thank you again for joining me on another miniature rescue. If you like something about this video, please consider hitting that like button, sharing this message with your hobby friends, and subscribing for more miniature rescues. Once again, I'm Casey, and I will see you in the next video. And of course, here's the completed Njal Stormcaller. Thanks again for watching.